tiptoes to my room every night.
Ich swefna kust sejen willa, what me yamata to midra nita. These lines are from an 8th century Anglo-Saxon poem called The Dream of the Rood. The speaker, sometimes called the dreamer, tells the story of a visionary dream he had of an enchanted tree which speaks to him. The 4th century Catholic saint Martin of Tours was a Roman soldier of Illyrian origin. He left the Roman army at some point, and because he was very Christian, he became a saint. He was made a bishop in Gaul, and most of his stories are about that. One of those stories, he hears from the common folk a tale of a tomb which apparently is sacred to the Christians because of the holy martyrs who were robbed there once and killed, and their spirits resided there. And St. Martin, it said in his hagiography, was suspicious of this. So he went over to the tomb and prayed to God to tell him the truth, let him see the truth of what was going on at this tomb and the people within it, the spirits that dwelled there. Sure enough, a ghost rose out from the tomb and confessed to St. Martin that he had been a brigand and had been executed for his crimes. So he wasn't a martyr at all. Only St. Martin could see the ghost. Only he had that vision. The common folk couldn't perceive the ghost. Now this is a very interesting story because here we see St. Martin deliberately goes to a tomb with the intention of seeking a vision with the help of a deity. And he comes to learn a hidden fact which is communicated to him by the spirit of that grave that he goes to. Now this motif, this story, is really obviously pagan because we can see it in many pagan sources and also in many Christian sources where it's continued in Christian times. We can see strong evidence for this in many Indo-European sources, and we're going to look at those in this video. I'm going to show you some Germanic, some Celtic, some Greek and some Indian sources that show the exact story that's been depicted here, and using the kind of techniques for achieving visionary dreams that I depicted in the introduction to this video as well. And most of these dreams relate to the underworld, to the dead, but many of them are also said to be revealed as a service to the community. Therefore, they weren't just individuals trying to find out things, but rather people finding out something for the benefit of everybody. In other cases, it's simply a poet trying to receive poetic wisdom. In Northern Europe, such visionary dreams are usually associated with spiritual specialists, people who really know what they're doing. Neither the Nordic gods nor the Irish gods are associated with these dream visions, with the exception of one case when Thor is, but that's also in association with a barrow. And then also in the Irish sources we do have the example of Imbas, but he too is associated with a barrow because he sleeps in the Neolithic tomb New Grange. So generally Northern Europeans were more likely to associate visionary dreams with the dead, But in ancient Greece, we do see more examples where people will more willingly attribute such dreams to the gods themselves. But in all the Indo-European sources, we see quite a consistent association of such visionary dreams with the underworld, with chthonic entities, particularly the Earth Mother. Despite this, at least in the Celtic and Nordic sources, the dreams almost always come to men, and they only come to women in the context of a woman dreaming about a prophecy about her son. Such was the case with the prophetess Taghairm to the Queen Medb in the Irish epic Torn Bocúilne. The medieval historian Nora Kershaw Chadwick pointed out how strange this is in an essay which is the main source for this video, because Norse sources frequently refer to völur or seerkona, who are women employed to perform prophetic seances, sometimes at feasts. However, these women received visions while they are awake, not in dreams, and the women are associated with the Lapps or Sami people, in whose religions the shamanic tradition is central. The Norse sources sometimes say that the seerkona yawns before receiving the vision, which is a custom also recorded among shamans of the Yakut culture in eastern Siberia. So while these Norse shamanic seer women may be of Uralic origin, the prophetic dreaming man is Indo-European. The ability to dream in this way was viewed as a hereditary gift that came through the blood, as in the case of wise Thorleifr Spaki, a seer of the 10th century who inherited his powers from his ancestor of the same name, who was the official seer of King Halfdan the Black. Not all kings needed an official seer, since the gift of prophetic dreams was more common among royal families. Halfdan didn't have the gift, but his own half-brother Olaf did. Olaf received a vision that a terrible plague was coming, so he built a great barrow in which he and his followers could be interred. The prophecy came true, and the barrow was filled. Then Olaf was worshipped as an elf, so he is called Olafr Gyrstad-Elfr, Olaf, the elf of Gyrstad. Elves were not pointy-eared little people though, but rather semi-divine entities associated with the souls of illustrious ancestors. Some Christians believed the later Saint Olaf was a reincarnation of Olaf the elf. Both Norse and Celtic people had specific techniques by which a prophetic dream could be induced. When Halfdan complained to his seer that he didn't have the gift, Thorleifr told him to do as he does whenever he needed to induce a dream, which is to sleep on a svinaboli, which literally means pigsty, but is a poetic periphrasis for a barrow. Now this links the custom to Ingwifreyr, the god of the burial mound, whose totemic beast was the wild boar, because he rides one named Gullinbursti. In Egil's saga, Egil's wolfish grandfather, Kveldulf Bjelfesen, the berserker, is said to have obtained supernatural knowledge by remaining silent while sitting up at night with a cloak wrapped around his head. At such times he was called Hammramr, a shapeshifter, which is a skill associated with the Ulfhednar, or wolf-headed, who wore the actual skins of wolves on their heads, like the man depicted on this pressblack plate from Sweden. In Wales, the gifted were known as awenyddion, and awen is specifically associated with the inspiration of poets and bards. The 12th century Welsh Norman Archdeacon of Brecon, Gerald of Wales, says of them, "When consulted upon any doubtful event, they roar out violently, are rendered beside themselves, and become, as it were, possessed by a spirit. They do not deliver the answer to what is required in a connected manner, but the person who skillfully observes them will find, after many preambles and many nugatory and incoherent, though ornamented speeches, the desired explanation conveyed in some turn of a word. They are then roused from their ecstasy, as from a deep sleep, and, as it were, by violence, compelled to return to their proper senses. After having answered the questions, they do not recover till violently shaken by other people, nor can they remember the replies they have given. If consulted a second or third time upon the same point, they will make use of expressions totally different. Perhaps they speak by the means of fanatic and ignorant spirits. These gifts are usually conferred upon them in dreams." Among the Irish, there was a rite known as forosnai, or inspiration which enlightens, also connected to poetic inspiration. The associated techniques of which are described in Cormac's glossary, and in the mythology associated with the hero, Finn MacCool. The seers, from an elite class of poets known as Filíd, use sensory deprivation in order to enter a trance and receive the vision. Part of the custom survived in more recent times among poets who used to compose their works in the dark. In the original rite, a filly would chew the raw flesh of a dog, a cat, or a pig, then go to sleep in the company of their kinsman, who would watch carefully until he awoke, at which point he would relate to them all that he had experienced in the dream. The Irish also had the tairbfheis, bull sleep, a rite to determine the High King at the Hill of Tara. A bull was sacrificed, a man would eat its flesh and drink its broth, and then lie down to sleep, and while sleeping he would receive a vision of the future king. This resembles an account from the 17th century Irish historian Geoffrey Keating, who related that the druids of old would stretch the skins of sacrificial bulls over rowan wattles, and in so doing invoke demons who could provide the knowledge they sought. The Celts also had a tradition of sleeping out on barrows in order to communicate with chthonic entities. One such example is in the aforementioned Imbas, a god of virility who legend holds lives inside the Great Barrow of New Grange by the River Boyne. A legend describes how Imbas dreamed of a beautiful woman who made him lovesick, to the extent that his mother and father went searching for the dream woman. The Welsh also used barrows to induce dreams. In the story of Pwyll, Prince of Dyfed, Pwyll seats himself on an enchanted mound, which we must presume is a barrow, and at once has a vision of Rhiannon, a supernatural woman riding a white horse, who is likely to be a reflex of an earlier Celtic goddess. There are many Norse parallels in Icelandic literature where barrows are frequently associated with Valkyria. For example, in the poetic Edda, a Valkyrie appears to Helgi Hjörvardsson as he is seated on a barrow. Of course, the Valkyries themselves were explicitly associated with the dead, so connecting them to barrows is quite natural. Among the Norse, the most common reason for sleeping out on a barrow was to acquire poetic eloquence, rather than a prophetic vision. In Olaf's saga Tryggvasonar, the shepherd Halbjörn hoped to gain the gift of poetry by sleeping on the barrow of a great dead poet named Thorleifr, to whom he wished to compose a poem of praise. Many nights passed with no success, until finally the barrow opened and Thorleifr appeared, saying, "There you lie, Halbjörn, struggling to compose a panegyric on me, which is beyond your powers. One of two things will happen. Either you will surpass everyone in this art, which you will acquire from me, and this is the most probable alternative, or else you need not struggle any longer with it. I am going to recite a verse to you now, and if you acquire it and remember it when you awake, you will become a great poet and compose panegyrics for many chiefs, and become highly accomplished in this art." He then recited a poem about himself, which Halbjörn remembered when he woke up, and he therefore became a great poet. This wasn't a random event, since Halbjörn deliberately slept on the barrow with the intention of acquiring that skill. Another saga in the same manuscript, Flateyjarbók, tells us of Thorstein Uxafotr, whose mother was dumb. While travelling, Thorstein spent the night on a large barrow, and in his dream saw the occupant of the barrow emerge and tell him that there was gold inside the mound, which bestows the power of speech. So Thorstein descends into the barrow and then retrieves the gold, and then when he wakes up, that gold is next to him. So he goes home, takes it to his mother, puts it under her tongue, and she acquires the gift of speech. But this gift of speech surely represents the poetic eloquence. It's a metaphorical story. It's connected to the myth of Odin and the golden mead of poetry, about which I've made another video. From the Anglo-Saxons, we have Christian sources that provide insights into the earlier pagan beliefs surrounding barrows. a 10th century magic charm called With Farstika, against stabbing pain, begins saying Hluda waren hu lu hluda da hu offerdona hlauriden, and reveals who these loud ones might be, saying Yith hitwara Isa yeshot, otho hitwara Ulfa yeshot. Thus barrows are associated with potential harm, coming either from the gods called Isa, or from elves, meaning the mighty ancestors within the barrow itself. It seems that the practice of communing with the dead at pagan burial mounds persisted in England in the 10th century, when an abbot named Alfric complains that witches still go to crossroads and to heathen burials with their delusive magic and call to the devil, and he comes to them in the likeness of the man who is buried there, as if he arise from death. An Anglo-Saxon saint, Guthlac of Crowland, preached in the 7th century, when some of the English was still openly pagan. Therefore, we can expect to see pagan themes in his hagiography, which helped to market the new religion to the pagans. He is alleged to have lived as a hermit on an island in the river at Crowland in Lincolnshire, where he built a hut on top of a barrow. There he was besieged by visions of hideous demons every night, and we can safely assume these so-called demons were really the spirits of the dead, since they are said to have spoken Celtic, at a time when everyone in that region spoke English. Clearly, this subverts a contemporary English pagan custom of sleeping on barrows in order to convene with the spirits there. But another point about Guthlac is also of interest. Felix, who wrote within living memory of his death, reveals that while living on the barrow, Guthlac would never wear any wool or linen or any garment except those made from animal skins. And this too was an important part of the pagan procedure of inducing visionary dreams. There are many examples of pagans inducing such dreams by sleeping on the skin of an animal, like I did in the intro. Besides Guthlac, or the aforementioned custom of the Irish Druids using cow skins, we also have an account from the 17th century Scottish writer Martin Martin, who, in his description of the Western Islands, wrote that in a remote place, a man was wrapped in a cow's hide and left there all night, during which time he would receive the knowledge he sought from his invisible friends. Now these friends are surely the spirits of the dead. The rite is elsewhere named Taghairm, recorded not only among the Gaels, but also the lowlanders, and often involving animal sacrifice. When a man needed to tell the future, he would be wrapped in the smoking hide of a sacrificial ox, and lain down in the wildest recess of some lonely waterfall, which was supposed to block out distracting sounds, as he lay waiting for communication from the invisible beings who would provide the knowledge he required. In more recent times, this custom persisted, not among prophets, but among poets who wanted to receive inspiration. But this died out in the 17th century. A medieval Welsh story called The Dream of Rhonabwy relates how the hero sleeps on a yellow calf skin and then experiences a vision of King Arthur in the time of the Saxon invasions. Chadwick compared this again to the Yakut shaman of Siberia who lies on a white mare's skin prior to his performance, but I think that is an unrelated custom, since we also see, among the Greeks, evidence that visionary dreams from sleeping on animal skins are Indo-European rather than Siberian in origin. In order to induce visionary dreams, the oracle at the temple of Asclepius near Epidaurus first underwent a ritual ablution in the baths, then would lie down, either between the arms of the goddess or upon the skin of a ram. Pausanias, living in the 2nd century, wrote, "They sacrifice a ram, and after having stretched its skin on the ground, they go to sleep on it and wait for the onorological revelation. The dreamer may see a snake, a dove, or any kind of animal in the vision. But in this context, it is always interpreted as representing a god and not the spirits of the dead, whereas in the Norse tradition, the entities known as Filíd, guardian spirits attached to a person or family, can appear as animals and in dreams as doubles for people,
not necessarily dead people.
The Indians and Greeks and Romans distinguished between prophetic dreams and normal dreams, between good dreams and bad dreams. The ancient Indian holy text, the Rig Veda, was composed very soon after the Aryans arrived in India, about 3,500 years ago. But it was based on much older Indo-European beliefs and stories. The Indian concept of svapna, dreams, is first introduced in the Rig Veda. And the word svapna is cognate with Anglo-Saxon svefen and many other Indo-European language words that mean dream.
The Rig Veda also describes waking dreams or daydreams, saying that they are evil, which some people explain as being due to the fact that they are a distraction for the focused mind. In another verse, we are told of a malicious entity who bewitches a sleeping woman in her dreams. Much later Indian literature provides more detailed guidelines for interpreting dreams. For example, Chandogya Upanishad, verse 289, says seeing a woman in your dreams means your sacrifice was accepted, while Kaushitaki Brahmana states that seeing a man in black with black teeth is a very bad omen. Mandukya Upanishad, written about 1600 years after the Rig Veda, and therefore very different and more obviously Indian, explains that the symbol Om is the self, and that the self is the highest god, Brahman, and that we and he are composed of 4 states of consciousness. The waking state, Jagarita, the dreaming state, Svapna, the dreamless deep sleep, Susupti, and the state of pure consciousness which transcends the others, Turiya.
Back in ancient Greece, Homer depicted dreams as phantoms given diverse forms by the gods, which can represent either the gods themselves or the spirits of the dead. He makes a crucial distinction between dreams which enter through the gates of ivory and dreams which enter through the gates of horn. Only the latter can be called prophetic. He writes,
"Such as pass through the portals of sawn ivory are deceitful, and bear tidings that are unfulfilled. But the dreams that come through the gates of polished horn bring a true issue, whosoever of mortals beholds them." Plutarch also makes a distinction between normal dreams and dreams of prophetic significance. The Greeks viewed the spirits of the underworld as shades, literally mere shadows of their living selves. But this belief might be of Near Eastern rather than Indo-European origin, as we see similar beliefs among the ancient Hebrews. Besides, the Greeks were reluctant to apply this concept to aristocratic heroes and kings, some of whom achieved a godlike status instead, such that in the Iliad, it is not the shade of Patroclus, but Patroclus himself who appears to Achilles in a dream asking to be buried as soon as possible, with the result that his body is cremated and a barrow is raised over the ashes. Euripides, on the other hand, writing several centuries after Homer, says that dreams are the children of Gaia, the Earth Mother, again demonstrating a telluric association, which we may connect to the aforementioned traditions. Do you dream of a world where history broadcasting celebrates European culture? Well, you can make that dream come true by supporting this channel. For as little as the price of a pint of beer a month, you could help me to continue making these videos and support all the research and work that goes into them. Check out the links to my Patreon and my Subscribe Star in the description. You should also peruse my online Teespring store, which features a number of excellent designs of very Indo-European artwork. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.